Hello, everybody. Welcome to a debate on whether there are scientific errors in the Quran. There seems to be some confusion right at the onset, of course, right away. Nadir Ahmed said that he wanted to, or Nadir Ahmed wanted to do 3-minute intervals, and I was under the assumption that it was going to be 3-minute intervals after an opening argument. Apostate Prophet had prepared an opening argument, but if both of the contestants are good with 3-minute interactions, I mean, we can do that too, I suppose. All right, so I'm going to set a timer, and I believe that traditionally the affirmative goes first. Is that right?
You mean basically I can just make the claim of what I believe about the Quran, and then AP can come next? And
yeah, I guess we can just.
So we're going to do the negative goes first this time.
I don't know. I guess we can just each of us. He can start what he thinks about the whole topic that we're talking about. I can make a brief, summary of what I think about this topic, and then we can maybe just start discussing.
All right. Well, traditionally, it's the one making the affirmative statement. In this case, sure. It would be the guy saying that there are scientific errors in the Quran. So that would mean that Apostate Prophet would go first.
Okay, so I prepared a 20-minute speech. So I'll have to try to shorten that as much as possible and summarize what I mean by.
Yeah, and so we're going to do. Should we say we'll agree on? We'll do like a half hour or so, and then we'll switch over to audience questions.
I think 40 minutes is good. Maybe 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go 40 minutes then, or let's say we'll go to 2:40. Because that'll make it easier on me, because I'm on Central Time. I don't know about either of y'all. All right, we'll go to 2:40, and then we'll go to audience questions. And Apostate Prophet, it's over.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Give me a bit of time because I have to break this down quickly. Well, anyways, I'll just do my best with it. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. Thanks for making this possible. Thanks for being interested. Thank you, Aaron and Ra, for being so kind and hosting and moderating this. Thanks, Nadir, for offering this debate. I'm usually not a great fan of debates, and this is kind of my first actual debate. So if I screw up at some point, it's probably just because I'm a human with mistakes. And ironically, we're also talking about mistakes today, the scientific mistakes of the Quran. It is the Islamic belief that there are absolutely no scientific mistakes. The Islamic belief is that Allah sent a book to humans. Allah revealed the book to humans. And every word in this book that Allah revealed to humankind is directly the word of Allah. There is no human intervention, no human influence, no human changed anything about those words. No human wrote them down in their own words. Everything comes directly from Allah, which is why a Muslim cannot accept the thought that the Quran is in any way wrong. In fact, the Quran itself makes this assertion by saying that if this book was from any other than Allah, he would find mistakes, discrepancies in this book. And it happens to be that people like me or many other people have a lot of mistakes in this book. I just want to encourage the Muslims out there to review their perspective of the Quran, because I was a Muslim too. When you grow up as a Muslim, you learn that this book is the absolute truth, that there is no bigger truth than this. You put it above everything, you kiss it. And the question whether the Quran could be wrong is not a question that is answered with a no. The question doesn't even exist. There is no such question. It is merely the absolute truth, and questioning it is not part of anything at all. What I would like to say to non-Muslims is just stay where you are with your beliefs. Anyways, without further taking time, I want to talk about specific mistakes that I think are more important, that could be concluded in a much better way. I don't want to focus on very much on biology, because I think the biology issues are kind of it's a back and forth that never ends. So I want to focus on the solar system, on the sun, on the moon, the sky, and rain, for example, on the objects around us. This is in general what I want to focus my assertion on, that the Quran has mistakes.
Yeah,
I understand.
I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so and this is going to be a little constrained, but try to work with it.
Okay, no problem.
All right, so Nadir, let's see, 1 second. All right, it's your turn. You're muted.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Aaron, for giving me this opportunity to have this discussion with Ridwan, Apostate Prophet, and very nice meeting you again, Ridwan. And actually, some people might not know, I'm actually a secret admirer of the Aaron Ra show. In fact, I'll tell you what my favorite episode was. It was a Matt Slick discussion you had. So if you ever get a chance, watch that. It was very entertaining. And I also learned a lot about evolution and other things related on your show. So what makes the Quran a scientific miracle? It's 3 things. Number 1, there are no scientific errors in the Quran. Number 2, the Quran actually corrects the scientific errors of the Bible, and it is something amazing. And the third thing, the Quran, there are statements in the Quran which agree with modern science, which scientists have only discovered recently in today's time. Yet these were mentioned in the Quran 1400 years ago. But saying that actually poses a problem. The first problem, and this is something I realized back in the 90s, there really was no way to prove that the Quran has no scientific errors unless you have people challenging it. I remember back then I called up Ahmed Didat. I talked to so many people. We had a very nice discussion on the phone, actually. Well, over 20 years later now, we now can answer that question because so many people have come forward trying to find scientific errors in the Quran. And in fact, Apostate Prophet Ridwan actually created a video in which he claimed there were 60 scientific errors in the Quran. And I have looked through all of this, and not just that, but also other videos and other people's claim that there are scientific error in the Quran. And I can confidently tell you today that the Quran is in 100% complete harmony with science. And actually, the way I see it, people like him are very important. We could not have said that today unless they would have put the effort to try to find scientific errors inside the Quran. And there's also another thing. There's another thing which is, and this is something I really don't understand it well enough. In their folly in trying to find scientific error with the Quran, they have actually discovered scientific miracles. That's right. Ridwan discovered a scientific miracle, which no one knows today, but we are going to discuss this. Hopefully we'll leave that for the very end in showing how the Quran is in complete agreement with science. So having said that, I would like to ask Ridwan, please come forward today.
That's 3 minutes.
And show me the scientific error in the Quran. Go ahead.
Yep, that's 3 minutes. Apostate Prophet, your turn.
Okay, well, I would like to start with one of my favorite issues, actually, which is it is a very normal thing among Muslims to believe that at the end of the world, Muslims believe that the world will come to an end at some point. It is always considered soon in the future. And at the end of the world, the sun will one day rise from the west, come from the west. And when the sun comes from the west, no repentance will be accepted from the humans, and the world will then soon end after a series of events. And this is a very normal belief among Muslims, and people don't even question how absurd it is, when in reality, it is a very absurd thing to believe in. This is a fundamental Islamic claim that is most prominently based on hadith, such as Sahih Bukhari 554-421 in English, where Muhammad explains that the sun goes somewhere at every sunset, that it travels until it prostrates itself under the throne of Allah, that it asks for permission to rise again. So the sun is asking Allah for permission to rise again. Allah gives the sun permission, and one day Allah will say to the sun, go back where you came from, and the sun will then rise from the west. I'm giving this hadith in order to understand the Quran better. The Quran says at several different points. For example, in chapter 2, verse 258, that Allah brings the sun from the east, literally, and that no one can bring it from the west. It says in chapter 36, verse 38, that it is that the sun runs on a course toward its stopping point, which, according to this hadith, is also the place where the sun prostrates itself under the throne of Allah every night. According to 36, verse 40, it says that the moon and the sun follow each other and swim in an orbit together, because that's what it looks like when you look from down here. According to 91, verse 2, it says again that the moon follows the sun. So we are in a solar system, and in the solar system, from our point of view, from the Earth's point of view, the sun is at the center of the solar system. It doesn't go anywhere, except that we all together revolve around the center of the galaxy in 230 million years. In this solar system, where we are revolving around the sun, and the sun doesn't go anywhere, and we are just revolving around our own axis, where exactly does the sun go? Who exactly brings the sun from the east? How exactly are the moon and the sun following each other? As we know, the moon is revolving around the earth while we are revolving around the sun. How could it be an accurate statement to say that the sun and the moon are following each other and that they can't overtake each other in an orbit, or that Allah would one day bring the sun from the west? This is a very absurd perspective of the sun. There could also never be a place where the sun goes at night, because the sun is always visible somewhere on the earth.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Nadir, your turn.
Okay, thank you, Ridwan. Well, if I may ask, Ridwan, if you could just bring up one verse and one point at a time. You've basically shotgunned me with dozens and dozens of different points, and I understand. I think this is maybe your first debate, and so maybe you just kind of throwing out all the information. So let me just very quickly go through all of this. As I said, you will never find anything in the Quran which contradicts modern science. When you say that one day the sun will rise from the west, let me ask you this question, Ridwan. In the context of this hadith, and you're zigzagging from Quran to hadith, going back to the Quran, let's stick with what the Quran says, because this is what the challenge is, okay? But I'm just going to very quickly answer that for you. Is that an act of nature or an act of God? Can you answer that, Ridwan, very quickly, from what you understand from that hadith?
Please proceed with your time. We can do that back and forth.
Okay. Well, this is an act of God. This is talking about how God intervenes within nature to finish the universe, to finish life as we know it. So this is a miracle of God, and we don't apply science to miracles. Okay. So basically, the definition of science of a miracle is that God intervening and then disrupting the natural way the world works. Okay. So this is a massive kind of failure for you to really point something out in the Quran which contradicts science. So this is a question that you need to ask yourself. Is this an act of nature or an act of God? Because the Quran talks about the natural world. Why don't you address those verses and show me how those contradict science? And you never will. You talked about Surah 36, verse 36, 38, the sun has a stopping place. This is not what the Quran says. Okay, there is nothing in there. So you have actually misrepresented what the Quran says. You said that the sun and the moon follow each other. So here we just got to apply something called common sense. When we are sitting from our perspective over here, as we sit on this earth and we see the sun comes up and then the sun goes down and we see the moon comes, this is what it's talking about. Now, I have not seen any evidence here from that verse which says it's talking about anything else other than our perspective. So there's no contradiction of science over there. You asked a question. I think you said cannot overtake each other in an orbit. I didn't understand what you were referring to over there, so you may need to repeat that. And one day God will bring the sun from the west. Absolutely. This is about the end of time when God will intervene and destroy the world. So as we can see here, just another, he has failed. And we're going to see this throughout that he will not be able to bring a scientific error in the Quran. And please, my time's up, but Rizwan, please bring 1 point at a time, just one issue. In fact, probably the issue about murky waters, the sun going down on murky waters, that would be a good one to talk next, if you could.
Aaron, you're muted.
Are we doing one issue at a time, or are we doing 3 minutes at a time?
No,
3 minutes, but just bring up one issue if you could.
Well, then
Out of a lot
he's
you gave
costing
me.
himself. He's costing himself his 3 minutes if he's only allowed to bring up 1 point.
Well,
I could put 15
okay.
points into 3 minutes.
well, there is no such rule. We're talking about
Okay.
scientific mistakes.
Go ahead.
Back and forth. And one issue in the Quran is brought up in 3 or 4 several verses. So I obviously have to come with numerous points. Okay. Does my time start?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know why you were so hostile, Nadir. We're having quite a normal exchange. I don't think this has anything to do with me with this being my first debate. I'm just trying to put some points together in order to make my points stronger. And I think it is also it is of no benefit to any of us for you to assume what the audience actually thinks of this exchange. I mean, you cannot constantly go ahead and say you failed, you will fail, and this and that. That doesn't really do anything except just cause provocation. But let us go ahead. I cited the hadith as I clearly stated because the hadith are an essential part of Quranic teachings, because because the hadith explain the Quran. This is very well known in Islamic theology. Hadiths are fundamentally a part of Islamic teachings, and they are always used together with the Quran in order to explain the Quran. And when a hadith clearly explains what this Quran verse says, it has to be used, and I will obviously use it because it brings a great support to the point at hand. I would say that the assertion that something that we cannot understand is a miracle comes from your perception that the Quran can never be wrong. In fact, if I asked you whether you can accept the idea that the Quran has a mistake, that the Quran is in any way wrong, you would tell me that you cannot accept that idea, because accepting the thought that the Quran is in any way wrong would eliminate your faith. It would eliminate your belief completely. I clearly talked about how the Quran has a mistake in terms of let me get this shit out again, where the Quran says that the sun runs towards its stopping point. You said the Quran doesn't say that. If I open the accepted translations of Quran chapter 36 verse 38, the most prominent translation, Sahih International, says, "And the sun runs on course towards its stopping point." Pickthall says, "And the sun runneth unto a resting place for him." It even says resting place. Pickthall is known for being very linguistically accurate. Arbery, which is the most accurate in linguistics, not often in context, says, "And the sun, it runs to a fixed resting place." Shakir says it runs to an appointed term for it, and Shakir is usually known as a much less accurate translation. So the most dominant translations, the most reliable ones, clearly say that the sun runs toward a stopping point, as the hadith also points out. So the idea of the Quran is that the sun runs for a fixed term above us. As in verses given before, the moon clearly follows the sun, and the two cannot overtake each other, because that's what it looks like from here. And the sun runs until it goes to a stopping point. We can, of course, come to, I believe my time will be up soon. We can, of course, come to where the sun sets in a muddy spring. And this is part of the discussion. We will definitely come to that. But it says stopping point. Aaron, you're muted again. Aaron, we can't hear you.
So here I am muted, talking for a while. My apologies. See, I'm seeing some discussion in the comments about this, and since there was no opening presentation from either of you, then we don't have a definition from either of you as to how you would identify scientific errors. I mean, if Apostate Prophet is going to say that there are scientific errors in the Quran, he has to be able to give reasons why. Likewise, Nadir, you've said that there are many scientific errors in the Bible, so you have to have a definition for those as well. So how do we determine whether something is a scientific error?
We could briefly put this into a back and forth again if you want to.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that real quick? Well, I think I need to answer AP, then I can answer you, Aaron. Do you want me to just
give me
quickly
just a moment.
answer?
I'll just be aware that that question is out there. If you've got a moment, please clarify and begin.
Okay. Oh, one second. I'm just trying to share my screen here. Just give me 1 second. Open Google Chrome would like to record this computer screen here. Okay, just give me 1 second here. Can you guys see my? Let me just get permission. I'll tell you. Chrome will not be able to record the contents of your screen.
Nope. Nadir has apparently shared his screen right off of the network. Yeah, I'm not. So I guess he'll be back in a moment. In his absence, Apostate Prophet, would you please give your definition of how we identify a scientific error?
Of course. Well, I would say what I describe here as a scientific error is when the Quran makes an absolute statement about something that happens in our universe, in our nature around us, something that we can observe, or that we cannot directly observe, we couldn't observe in that time, that we can now through scientific means see and verify. If the Quran makes a statement about these things, for example, the movement of the sun or plants or biology, and if these statements are objectively wrong, if we clearly conclude that these statements are wrong, then this constitutes a scientific mistake in the Quran. And I think this is such an important issue because the Quran, because it is believed that the Quran is the absolute truth of the word of Allah.
And you're back.
I'm sorry about that. So I tried to hit share the screen here, and it completely ended my session here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my computer screen here. Can you guys see my computer screen?
I just see you.
Okay, so I'm hitting. Okay,
well,
so
got you on here twice. There's another version with you that has a shared screen. I'm not sure how that's happening.
Let me close this here. 1 second. 1 second. All right, how is this better? And I'm gonna hit. I guess I wanted to kind of show you the verse which he was quoting, so we can all have it in front of us.
Okay, time is set.
Can you guys see my computer screen here?
To describe it, it's too small to read.
Okay, let me end the share here. I'll have to figure this out here. Leave studio, stop screening. Okay, here we go. That's not gonna. I guess the share is not going to work. All right, so the verse which you quoted, about the sun having a stopping place. Well, if that's what the Quran says, well then, yeah, that would be a scientific error now, wouldn't it? And if you could show me that, I will leave Islam today. You asked me, am I open for, correction? Absolutely. I mean, if the Quran says that the sun stops, and just stand still, then this would be a scientific error, of course. But that's not what the Quran says. The word there, which you are mistranslating as stopping, is mustaqar. Okay, now mustaqar, what that means, it's actually a pretty common word. Just 1 second, sorry about that. It's actually a very common word. It means stability. Now, I'll give you an example of how mustaqar is actually used. Like in our house, we use that word a lot. Like my wife, she said, I'm not allowed to do these type of debates. I said, why? She said, because you're not mustaqar. You're not settled. You're not stable, in your career and things like that. So I finally got to a position where I finally got mustaqar. I said, listen, I'm mustaqar now. Okay, so I can do these debates. So this is just an example of how the word is being used. So as we can see here, this is just another careless misreading of the text and another failed attempt to try to find scientific error in the Quran. So those are two failed attempts. But like I said, if you can show me anything in the Quran which explicitly, contradicts science, it has to be word for word, I will leave Islam today, no problem. Now, I think you said that I was being hostile with you. If I came off like that, I do apologize. But I'm definitely going to challenge you here, AP. I'm going to challenge some of the things you've said, and I'm going to definitely challenge your argument. So please don't interpret that as being hostile. So, how many minutes do I have here?
You got a half a minute.
Half a minute. Okay, so one of the things I want to ask you, because of this mustakar issue, this debacle you brought up with stopping point, how well do you understand the Arabic of the Quran? And because you don't have to learn Arabic, you just got to research the words and the arguments you're using here. Okay, because mustakar doesn't mean stopping. So can you answer that question? Did you actually research the Arabic behind this, or are you relying on English translations?
Go ahead.
Done?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to correct something very quickly. I never said that you as a person would never ever accept that the Quran has mistakes and then leave Islam. I didn't say that. That's a red herring and a straw man. I said that you as a Muslim are not allowed to, or not possible to, accept that there is a mistake in the Quran, because that would eliminate your faith. It would destroy your faith. So you're ideologically not in a situation to accept that the Quran has a mistake, which is the entire reason why we are sitting here and having these discussions. This is why when we find a mistake that is apparently on a very clear reading a mistake, you reinterpret this as a miracle instead, which is ludicrous. When we come to the translation of the Quran, in which it clearly says stopping point, it doesn't really have much to do with my studies and what I say and don't say. As people here have heard, I clearly gave 3 references of the Quran, in fact 4 references of the Quran, one not in my favor. Those were Sahih International, Pickthall, and Arbery. Sahih International is currently the most widely circulated Quran translation in the world in the English language. Pickthall is one of the most widely respected Quran translations in the world. It is so much respected in the West and in the Islamic world because it comes from what's his name, Marmaduke Pickthall, I believe, who studied the Arabic language so deeply and studied Islam so deeply that he brought one of the most perfect Quran translations out there. And this is recognized by virtually every Islamic institute out there. So when these people are saying that the Quran has a stopping point according to the Quran verse, when they translate it like that, and you don't accept that, and you think that is just mere ignorance, then you are asserting that those people made a mistranslation, a very big mistranslation, in falsifying the meaning of the Quran, and that all the Islamic scholars and institutions and everybody who has accepted these translations, and the Al-Azhar University that has certified these translations, was mistaken, that they did this out of ignorance. The question whether I have studied Arabic or not, I'm a linguistic. I'm a linguistic student. I've studied linguistics very much until I didn't finish it, but I studied it very much. I've always loved linguistics. I was a Muslim myself, so I was very, very much interested in how the Arabic language is used, how it compares to English or in German and Turkish, the languages that I speak. And I studied the meaning of these Quran verses very clearly. The problem is I don't have to speak Arabic. It doesn't depend on me or you speaking Arabic. That's completely irrelevant. It depends on, we are looking here at certified, verified translations of the Quran that clearly tell us in English, in German, I have verified it in German, in Turkish, I've verified it in German, that it has a stopping point.
Yep, that's time. And I don't know what we can interject in about that, but if we have a word that means stability, doesn't that mean the opposite of dynamic? Anyway, I'm not sure how we can argue translations. Nadir, give me 1 second. I blanked my timer. 1 second, please. There we go. You're good. Begin.
Oh, this is going to be a very long night for you, Ridwan. So you don't have to speak Arabic. I already told you that. But at least the verse which you are quoting, you should have at least studied it well enough to know that mustaqar doesn't mean stop. I don't care what English translations you read. You can Google these verses. There's online dictionaries, and there it will show you that the word means stability. I have given you an example of how we use that word in our household. The problem is, Ridwan, you didn't do your research on this. I think, and this is something common, what I see happening. Everybody is just copying and pasting here. okay? And they're just relying on English translations, and they're carelessly not carelessly just making these assumptions here, and so you're not paying attention to the text over here. So we can Google that verse. I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to show you from the dictionary. There's online dictionaries, by the way, which can help you. And again, you don't have to speak Arabic. You just have to copy and paste words out of the Quran and put them in Google Translate, and you're going to get the meaning. So, like I said, if the Quran says that the sun stops, tawakkuf, this is the word, tawakkuf, and as you'll find that all throughout the Quran. I will leave Islam today. I will be apostate prophet junior. I'll be your little mini me if you can show me that. But mustaqar doesn't mean stopping, okay? So if you are going to rely on English translation, I didn't read, there's hundreds of English translations out there. I didn't go through and waste my time trying to figure out which one's the stability. And there are some translations, by the way, which translate as stable. I didn't want to waste my time with an English translation. But anyways, like I said, this is just you don't know what the word means, all right? And you're like, well, I'm just relying on these English translations over here. So I think what we need to do right now, let's move on to the next point. Maybe you will do better in the next point. In fact, I'm still waiting for this, for the canard about the sun going down into a pool of murky waters. Perhaps we can do that one next. But like I said, and I think I got another 40 seconds here. And this is what I've researched. Like I said, I've researched through all these so-called alleged 60 alleged scientific errors of the Quran. And what you are going to find is you will never be able to find a single contradiction with modern science. The Quran is in complete harmony with modern science. And that's not possible for it to do that because the Quran makes many explicit, scientifically correct statements. So the question we need to start asking tonight is, why can we not find an explicit statement in the Quran which contradicts science?
Okay, and just as a deviation, as an aside, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you another minute or so. Nadir, can you explain what you mean or what the verse means? Because there's some people in the chat asking about this. What does it mean for the sun to move to a position of stability every 24 hours, especially since the sun doesn't move in relation to the earth anyway? Can you please explain what the verse means rather than what it does not mean?
Well, there's really no explanation given as far as when it talks about, that it's mustaqar and it's talking about stability. This is widely open for interpretation. So I don't want to see what this is I don't want to be put in a position where I start reading science into the verses of the Quran, claiming that it's referring to this. And so this is actually a mistake many people do. So I'm going to refrain from trying to interpret what stability means here. Okay,
we'll let that go.
Can I have that too for a second before I come to my part?
Go ahead.
I would like to read the Pictal translation of the verse that we are talking about, which is chapter 36, verse 38. I don't want to go into the Sahih International translation, which is a modernized translation, which says the same thing. But the traditional Pictal translation literally says this: "And the sun runneth unto a resting place for him." The word in question here is the one for resting place. And the sun runs unto a resting place for him. This is what the Pictal translation says. I would like the audience to go and figure out what that means. I don't think we need to comment on that further.
All right, very good. Do you want me to set the time on your?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we good with that, Nadir?
I'm sorry. What was your question? I didn't listen.
I allowed you a minute to explain what that meant, and I gave him a minute to explain what that meant. So I'm going to go back 3 minutes to 3 minutes.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you. I would like to say, for someone who doesn't want to waste time, as you repeatedly bring up, you have wasted a lot of time trying to accuse me of being ignorant, or accuse me of not having studied, accuse me of failing throughout the night, and so on. So I don't want to be childish. I don't want to bring up my household stories and what I say to my wife and waste more time on that. I would like the audience, if there is a topic here that we cannot conclude, I would like the audience to just go out there and, with all the information that we have given, to confirm what the matter of fact in reality is. That said, I would definitely want to go on and talk about the sun setting in a muddy spring, but I want to talk about something else first. Actually, I would like to talk about that as well. And let me say this. If we look at Quran chapter 18, verse 83 to 90, in verse 86, it tells us that that there is a character called Dhul Qarnayn, that this character called Dhul Qarnayn went very far to the west, where no Arab has ever been. And I added the Arab part. And he saw the sun setting in a muddy spring, or in a murky spring, however you may want to call it. But that is not all. I wouldn't want to stand on this point, because this is something that we discuss so often. I would like you to go further to verse 90, which is just a few verses later, where it says that afterward, Dhul Qarnayn also went to the east, so far to the east where no Arab went, and he saw the rising place of the sun, and he saw that the sun was rising on a people who didn't have any protection, who didn't have any shield against the sun. That is literally what the Quran says. The Quran says that that there were a people who didn't have a protection, a shield against the sun, which was, of course, a very dramatic issue, because they are so close to the sun. They are right at the rising place of the sun that they don't have a shield against it, and they feel very bad about that, of course. So I would like all those who listen to this, and all those who who hear this, to really question, how is it that on this planet that revolves around the sun, which spins around its own axis, the sun has a place where it sets in a muddy spring, apparently in a murky spring, so far in the west, and where it has a place where it rises, and where it rises upon a people who don't have a protection against the sun? How could this possibly be? In what universe does this come from an all-knowing God who created everything? That's it. Aaron, you're muted again.
Yeah, I'm trying to write down questions as I see them come up, and of course I have to have myself muted for that, so my apologies.
Oh, no problem.
One moment as I try to reset this again. All right, Nadir, go ahead. Yeah, Nadir, you're muted now.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. So once again, I think the problem here is, you are relying on English translations. Okay. The word for rising, you'll find this all throughout the Quran, is rafa'a. Okay. Rafa'a. This is rising. But the word here is muttaliya. Muttaliya. Okay. And what this word actually means is the way the sun appears. And you will find that actually in the Quran in many places, where Pharaoh said, I want to attaliya, I want to look at Moses as God. So, once again, what you want the Quran to say, it actually doesn't say. So you need to understand the difference between the word muttaliya and attaliya. Muttaliya and rafa'a. And so, you said something here, about the story from my household. What you need to understand here, Ridwan, that's a very important story, because it helps you to begin the process of understanding Arabic. It'll help you to see, oh, wow, these are words used in the Quran, and they're used in our daily life. Oh, okay, great. So this word over here, you're not stable in your life, mustaqar. That's like my wife's favorite word that she uses when she wants to come after me. So that's going to help you to start learning the Arabic language. I'm not claiming that I'm like some kind of expert on Arabic. I'm like at a very intermediate level, but I learned it. But I saw that there was a necessity to learn this so that you can understand and participate in these debates, and you can kind of understand, not rely on English translations. So I really, for you to have an intelligent response, you got to understand the difference between the word rafa'a and muttaliya, and how you will find many examples. In fact, one of the problems we're having here, I'm not able to share my screen, so I can't, and I actually have dictionary definitions for you. I'm going to handhold you here, Ridwan, and show you from the dictionary what these words really mean. Okay, but I don't know. I'm going to appeal to you, Aaron. Is there any way? I'm going to try to share my screen over here one last time so I can kind of walk him through the dictionaries. And it's really cool because you got these online resources. You can literally copy and paste words from the Quran, put them in the dictionary, and you can see what these words and how they're being used in the Quran. So I'll try this one last time to try to share my screen. Let's try your entire. Let me try application window. I'm sorry, what's that?
I'm getting echo.
Oh, okay. I'm going to try to share my screen over here one last time. Share. Okay,
No,
can you guys see my screen? You guys can't see it?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Oh, you can or you can't? Oh, okay. Miracle here. Okay, well, but my time is up here, so I guess I'll have to end my screen share because I do have a dictionary definition for you on that, Ridwan. If you would like, I could walk and I can handhold you and walk you through some of the words of the Quran. Go ahead.
All right. I wanted to ask, I asked, am I saying it right? Ridwan?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. So I asked him while you were away earlier how he identifies a scientific error, and I'd like to give you an extra minute to define that. How do we determine whether something is a scientific error? Like when you're talking about the Bible, for example, how do you identify whether something in the Bible is a scientific error?
Oh, are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, that's. Can you give me 2 minutes on that?
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good question because the thing is, it's got to be explicit. It cannot be based on interpretation. It's got to be word for word. For example, when the Bible says that the mustard seed is the smallest seed you plant in the ground, no need to give any references. Just Google that. Just put Bible mustard seed, and you'll get the reference. This is an explicit scientific error inside the Bible. So if it's word for word and not something based on interpretation, then we know it is a scientific error. Now, what's very interesting on that, if you ask a Christian apologist, they will actually, say things like, "Oh, well, this is just poetic. This is just metaphorical." Now, why is that? Why do I take issue with that? Because Ridwan actually has made videos in which he accused people like myself that this is how Muslims claim to deceive people. They're going to say this stuff is all metaphorical. These things are all poetic, or they'll say, "Oh no, he's just talking to the people according to their understanding at that time." This is how people like David Wood, Sam Shimon, and Christian Prince, who are all, by the way, running away from the Bible and scientific errors, this is how they try to mislead and deceive people about the scientific errors of the Bible. Now, as you've heard tonight, I have not volunteered or offered any of those type of bogus explanations because what they're doing, they're actually just deceiving people. They're misleading people. And so one challenge I would put out to Ridwan here, you accused Muslim apologists such as myself that we are engaged in deception here. What would you say if I were to tell you that the videos you made mocking Islam, that with those people are actually deceiving people about the scientific errors in the Bible? And what would you do if I were to show you them offering stuff like, "Oh, well, that's just metaphorical. Oh, that's just the way he's just talking to people according to their understanding"? Would you condemn them in the same vigor as you condemn the Muslim apologist?
Okay. Ridwan?
Okay. Well, I would first like to say we're not talking about the Bible. Everyone knows that I'm an atheist, that I don't believe in the Quran or the Bible, and I am quite good friends with a lot of Christians who also criticize Islam, but they all know that I completely disagree with them on the Bible. I don't know why we're talking about this at all.
That was my fault. I brought it up as an example because I knew that he was claiming that there were scientific errors in the Bible, which meant that, as he was talking about, metaphorically, like when it says that, if you go to the top of a high mountain, or in Daniel, if you go to the top of a tall tree, you can see all of the kingdoms. I'm wondering to know, does that qualify as a scientific error? Because that's not possible on a spherical Earth, right? But then we have the excuse that it's metaphorical. So I guess statements made that are conflicting with science don't really count as conflicting with science, perhaps. I'm not sure. That hasn't been made clear in this debate.
Anyways, can we start my time to talk about?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. Okay, well, I want to make clear that Nadir Ahmed has still not responded to the audience's question and desire to explain the Quran verse at hand, which is 36:38, and where the sun, what actually happens in that verse. But okay, I'll accept that we are over that. I don't expect any normal responses to the issues that I raise at all. I don't expect any proper responses to the sun's rising place or where it goes into a murky spring and anything about that at all. We keep wasting time on how a lack of Arabic apparently decreases our authority or makes us completely ignorant about what the Quran says, and that translations that are widely accepted and certified, such as Sahih International and Pictol, Ask Any Muslim seriously, are apparently misleading and wrong. So I would say, forgive those big translators for presenting wrong translations of the Quran to us. But dear audience, go out there and make your own research after this. You will not be disappointed. I'm certainly not interested in changing your mind, Nadir. I don't think that is possible. So I would like to go ahead and just raise more points and see how see how people who listen to this are influenced by this, because that, I think, is the main point of a debate. Otherwise, I'm not a fan of debates. Everyone knows that. I would like to go further to a different topic, again related to the sun, and make you understand that the Quran has no idea what the sun is in nature. The Quran doesn't understand that the sun, that our sun, is just another star, like so many stars out there. The Quran has no understanding for that. The Quran says in chapter 37 verse 6, 67 verse 5, and 41 verse 12, those are almost identical verses in what it says about the sun or stars, that Allah beautified the nearest heaven with an adornment of stars. So there is a nearest heaven, and the stars are an adornment up there in that heaven. It even further explains to us, if you look at those verses or verses after that, it even explains to us that those stars are missiles. In traditionalist Muslim belief, the heaven is above us, and the stars serve as a protection, so that the devils can't go to the heaven and listen to Allah and His angels. In fact, let me read one of those cases to you. Chapter 37, verse 6 to 10. Indeed, we have beautified the nearest heaven with an adornment of stars, and as protection against every rebellious devil, so they may not listen to the high assembly. And they are attacked from every side with the stars. Driven off, for them is constant punishment, except for the one who snatches some fragments from the assembly. But they are pursued by a burning flame. This is the primitive, ludicrous view of the Quran of stars and the sky above us, that they are tiny objects thrown at devils, and that there is a high assembly, and that our sun is not a star.
It's time.
Thank you.
All right, Nadir, I'm going to give you one last 3-minute session, and then we're going to move to audience questions. Is that all right?
We can go further if he wants to. I don't know.
I'll leave that up to him.
Mute it, Nadir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, because I did not, he mentioned I did not get a chance to answer the murky spring sun going down in a murky springs and all that. And I was actually waiting to do that. Because there's a lot of points being sent, being sent. I guess I'm dealing with. So let's finish what he just raised, and once we're done with that, then we can end it and open up to question and answers. Does that sound okay?
That sounds fine. Your time is on.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen over here?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So we're still on the, as I said, I'm going to teach you a little bit of Arabic, and this is like Arabic. This is like for like the guy who doesn't know Arabic. This is how they can start understanding and learning what the Quran means. Now, as I told you, and the Quran actually doesn't say that the sun rises. Okay, but even if it did, that's okay, because scientists say the sun rises and the sun goes down. You'll find that on the NASA website. What they mean is this is the way it appears. And surprisingly, that's exactly what the Quran means. So here's a word, tattaliya, which you're quoting here, and you can see the word being used over here. Can you guys see that? This is the verse which I was telling you. This is chapter 28, verse 38. Okay. So that here we see Pharaoh using the same word, so that I may look at the God of Moses. It's the same word which you're misunderstanding to be rising. But you see, the thing is, what I would like to hear from you, Ridwan. You are supposed to do the due diligence on researching these words. You keep going to the canard. Oh, but the English translation, and it's certified. You're using words like this now. No, that's baloney. You should have researched it. Now I'm going to show you how to research these things. You can go to this website and you can copy and paste the exact same word. Here we see the word being used in the Quran. You don't need to learn Arabic for this, folks. Here we see it means view, okay? And you could see the same, you could see now the usages. These are good websites for you to learn from. Look how the word is being used over here. Heads up, he looked, you could see. So I hope you will retract the statement that the sun rises. That's not in the Quran. Rafa'a is rise. Now let me go back to your other point over here. You said that the whole thing about the beautifying about the sun and things like that, or I'm sorry, that the sun, I'm sorry, the stars are being used as missiles. I would love to address that. But I think what we need to do now, because I forgot to address your point about the sun, about Dhul-Qarnayn went to the place where he saw the sun going down in a pool of murky waters. So I don't know how much, I think I got one more minute over here.
You got to have
half a minute. So Ridwan, could you please come up and just finish your point about the sun going down in a pool of murky water? And there is a hadith which you quote by Abu Dhar, in which Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you know where the sun goes? It sets in a pool of murky waters. If you could just come up and quote that hadith, and then I'll deal with you on that. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess we're not going to go to audience questions yet.
Yeah,
Ridvan, you want to do that?
I don't actually think that that the hadith is relevant. I wouldn't bring the hadith up because the hadith is considered. It is actually considered one of the hadiths belonging to those that I quoted at the very beginning, where Muhammad describes where the sun goes at night, and I wouldn't necessarily bring that hadith up because I don't think the hadith is necessary. So I really don't know why Nadir is asking that of me. But if you want me to make to give a response to all of this, I really don't understand what else I'm supposed to do here. There is nothing to respond to. It is very clear. It was not a main point of me to say that the sun sinks in a muddy spring. In fact, I explicitly said that I don't want to spend too much time on that point. I think Nadir Ahmed missed that, and I think he assumed that we were going to talk about that, and I didn't do him the favor. I don't know, but either way, I really do not understand why Nadir has asked for this debate to happen, because this is not going anywhere, and he has helped us a lot today. Nadir Ahmed has served my cause very greatly today, and I just want everyone to know he wanted this debate. It was his challenge. I just accepted it after a while. So I don't know.
All right. If you don't want to continue, that's
no,
fine.
That's fine. We can go on if he wants to. That is totally fine with me. Or we can go to the audience questions. It also depends on how much time you have. I don't know.
All right. You've spoken for a minute and a half. I'll give Nadir a minute and a half. We'll go to audience questions.
Okay, sure.
Well, I still have not addressed his argument about the shooting stars. Okay, let's finish the argument, because I don't want him to get away with anything here. So you were saying that the Quran stated that that there are actually shooting stars, or something. I guess if I understand your argument correctly, you were saying that that stars are used as missiles against the Satans, and you see this as a scientific error. Is that correct, Ridwan?
That is correct. If you want me to respond to that in the fullest, I will gladly do that.
Okay, we're going to school you a little bit more on some Arabic, okay? And I'm going to handhold you through this, so it's going to be okay. So let's go to the verse which you're quoting, and in fact, let me go ahead and share my screen over here. So if you actually look at the verse which you are quoting there, the word for star is najam, okay? But the word, can you guys see my screen here?
There.
Okay. So as we can see, the word here is masabih. What this verse here is lamps. Okay, this verse is referring to, and we have used lamps. Now, 100% of the time, whenever I challenge people on that, well, what does the Quran mean by lamps? They'll say, oh, well, that's metaphorical. He's saying that, not me. If you say this is something which is metaphorical, Ridwan, or do you believe they're physical lamps? Anyway, either way, I don't care. Whichever way you go. But in no way does this contradict science in any way, because when science sees that there are things referring to gods, devils, heaven, and angels and things like that, what science is going to do, is that my time?
Yeah.
They won't even deal with it because it's religious. So once
Okay.
again, you have misrepresented the Quran. Go ahead, please.
All right. I would have rather not heard so much about how you're going to school him and how much he's misrepresenting. I don't think that's been demonstrated. So I would wish he would back off of that. I would like to go to audience questions. I have a handful of them.
Can I briefly respond to that?
Let's go. Yeah, let's respond.
Aaron.
All right.
1.5 minutes or 1 minute? How much?
Yeah, 1 minute.
Okay, well, the funny thing is that I never actually said shooting stars in this conversation. I said that the Quran says that stars were shot at devils. What is funny is that in reality the Quran refers to shooting stars. So when people observe shooting stars in the sky, the Quran literally perceives these. The Quran's author perceives these as stars actually moving through the sky. And those stars are thrown at rebellious devils in the sky. So this is how the Quran describes the lamps in the sky. This is how the Quran describes the stars in the sky. Every Islamic scholar in Islamic history knows this as stars. The Quran very clearly describes it as stars. It refers to many of them in the sky that you can physically see. I would even say Nadir Ahmed might go into translations again, and how this has to do with translations, a circle that we can never come out of. But I want to use hadith again. There are two hadith, which one of them is Sahih Muslim 5538, and for all those who are interested.
Sorry, that's
Sahih...
time. I gave you 1 minute for that.
Oh, okay, sure. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so we have a list of these questions. I wanted to start with the first one that I noticed.
Can I respond to that, Aaron? Can I respond to what he's saying?
I think we're done.
So now we're gonna tighten the noose here. You said that the Quran says that the stars are used for shooting at the devils. Can you show me that verse where it says stars? And you said all the ulama, all the scholars say it's stars. We'll get to that later, but show me in the Quran where it says that. Okay.
If we're going to be doing 1 minute per, and you're doing a minute to respond, then you're asking him to respond during your minute, so that it ends up being that there's no need of a timer.
This is a challenge because he needs to be confronted on what he's saying. You said this was in the Quran, that it said stars are being used to be shot at devils. Can you show me that? Now, I have shown you the verse you were quoting. It said lamps. Okay, go ahead, give me the verse.
Sure. Let me say this. I don't think we need to waste very much time on this. I'll give one example.
Clarify, are there lamps in space?
Yeah. So see, the point here is Quran chapter 67, verse 5. It clearly says, we have beautified the nearest heaven with lamps, and those lamps are thrown as missiles at devils. What other lamps is this referring to? This is very. I don't want to say anything further about this.
What is it referring to, Nadir?
What are the lamps?
Ridwan, please quote the verse you're talking about.
I already did, and certainly we have beautified the nearest heaven with lamps, and we have made them missiles for the devils. What are these lamps?
Science? How do they contradict science?
How do they not? What are these lamps? I don't have anything more to say about this. Seriously.
So as we can see here, he has failed to produce any contradiction of science. Yeah.
No, we're going to go on to the audience.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's do the audience.
So, everybody, we do have some questions that I'm going to be reading out of the super chat. Remember also that the efforts like this are going to be automatically demonetized by YouTube under most circumstances, because anytime you question whether scientific errors in the Quran, automatic demonetization according to the new rules. So any financial support, that would be very helpful, because I'm certainly not making any money off of YouTube. So one of the first question that I got was for Standing for Truth, who said that there were many other better scientific errors in the Quran than the first one that Ridwan brought up. And he said that Nadir can just say that even the weathermen say that the sun rises. He then moves on to his question. Says Quran 71:19 implies Allah spread out the earth like a carpet to imply that the earth is flat. His question is, how is this reconciled?
Who is the question for? Is it for me or?
But for both of you, how do you reconcile that?
Well, I would say, I mean, all of us have a different view on which scientific mistake in the Quran is a bigger scientific mistake. I would say, from my perspective, I don't think that verses like 71:19, for example, which describe the earth as a spread expanse, are the best point to bring up as a scientific mistakes, because on their own they cannot really be very well analyzed. They need to be brought together as a huge, vast collection of verses that describe the Quran as a flat, that describe the earth as a flat earth. I think my focus on the sun rising are because of the context of the rising. It is that the sun has a rising place, as the Quran says, or that it rises from the east and could possibly rise from the west, that the moon follows the sun and all that stuff. And also based on the hadith, for example, which says that in which Muhammad clearly describes that the sun goes to a place at sunset, at night, explicitly, and that it asks for permission to rise again, and that Allah gives the sun permission to rise again, and that one day it will not give the sun the permission, and the sun will rise from the west instead. This is why I think this is a very strong point to stand on. This is just my conviction.
And Nadir?
Yeah, so basically, I can't believe you're going back to the issue about the rising place. I told you the word rafa'a means to rise. And
this was a question.
Can I remind you this was an audience question?
Okay. Well, let me go to the one verse which is being quoted here. So when it talks about the earth was spread out, this is talking about chapter 23, verse 13. Over there.
Well, it actually says 71:19.
Oh, okay. Well, 23:13 actually will answer it. It says, and it is Allah who made the earth spread for you, that you may travel in its diverse roads. So here we see from just the context, when God said that the earth is spread out, it's made like a bed or something like that. It's not talking about the shape of the earth. If the Quran said the shape of the earth is flat, then this is clearly a scientific error. But when it says over here that we have spread out the earth for you so that you may travel, it is so clear from the context, it is not talking about the shape of the earth, but rather how God has spread out the earth for us to travel. And that is this is actually common sense and is scientifically correct.
Now, that's what he says in chapter 23, but what about 71?
Well, I've just given you the context of when God says these things.
I understand that you answered that doesn't matter what it says in 71 because it says this other more justifiable thing in 23. But what does it say in 71?
71, what's the verse?
71:19.
I'm sorry, 19?
Yes.
Okay, let me just pull that up here real quick. So here it says, thus we have made the earth an expanse. Well, again, the same points, applies here. If it says that the shape of the earth is flat, this is clearly an explicit scientific error. But we don't see that in the Quran. These are verses. The verse which I quoted for you explains this verse. So you see, Aaron, we use the Quran to explain the Quran within the context. So as we see over there, it is clearly talking about the way, how God has made the earth, ability for us to travel. We could also go to the tafsir. We could go inside Ibn Kathir, in which he actually explained what this verse here means. And over there, he said, paraphrasing the exact same thing I said, that this is basically talking about us being able to travel in the earth. But like I said, we have never seen any verse in the Quran which explicitly contradicts science. And I would love to see that.
Another question, because Tom Panel in our audience also asked for clarification on how to recognize a mistake. And in the example that I gave, the two instances where you have like being in a tall tree in a dream in Daniel, or being in the top of a tall mountain so that you can see all of the kingdoms, are either of these mistakes when reading in the Bible talk about, where you would not be able to see all of the kingdoms from the top of a tall mountain if the earth is a sphere? Do you understand that? So would either of these qualify as a mistake? His question is to define how we could recognize a scientific error?
Yeah, so I can answer that very quickly. We got to give the scripture the benefit of the doubt. Okay, we can't we cannot just sit there and have this malicious interpretation and have this malicious intent. I'm going to find errors in this book. It's unconvincing. It's not the right thing to do. People do that with both the Bible and the Quran. But that's why I always go back to the verse about the mustard seed, because this is an explicit scientific error. And that's why people like, David Wood, Sam Shimon, and Christian Prince, they all run away from this discussion challenge. Let's talk about the scientific errors of the Bible. And this is taqiyya. This is which is called deception of the Christians, in which they're going to mock and ridicule Islam about its alleged scientific errors, which have all been debunked today, but they will run away from the scientific errors of the Bible. So, I think at least we can, regardless who you believe is right or wrong here, you could give me a pat on the back in the sense like, we as Muslims, we have nothing to fear. We're not going to run away from scientific challenges like we see here today. But the Christians will run because they know that there are scientific errors in their books which are embarrassing and cannot be defended, and they fear public humiliation.
All right,
Also,
on that point,
go ahead.
Another question, this one from Andrew Martin. No, wait, there was another one that I wanted to see. What was a different question? Oh, yes, it was Warren NZ, who says, doesn't the Quran mention a flying horse?
No.
The Quran doesn't mention that explicitly.
Not mention a flying horse. Okay, good.
It's the Hadith that mentioned that.
Okay. Andrew Martin asks, why didn't Allah make us all suitable for heaven?
This is kind of off topic. It's off topic. I mean, it's good.
Okay. Saeed asks, what if the errors are actually points of view?
They are. I mean, the issue here is that we are dealing with a book that, if you grow up as a Muslim, if you are raised in a Muslim environment, you are raised from very early childhood with the idea that this book is the absolute truth and there is nothing bigger than this. I tried to kind of explain this at the beginning of this exchange. You learn that it is the absolute guide, the source of human life, that Allah there is even disagreement on whether Allah created this book, the Quran, or whether it was always uncreated together with Allah. It was the eternal word of Allah with him by his side. So it is the eternal word of Allah forever, for all times. So it can never be wrong. Now, a Muslim learns from very early childhood that this book can never be doubted, can never be questioned, must always be true. I always love to bring this question closer to Muslims, to say, dear Muslims, if you had not been raised with the assumption that this book is the absolute truth, if you had not been indoctrinated with it, if you came across this book randomly at the age of reason, in a time where in the 21st century, where you have the average scientific knowledge of an average human being, what would you then think about the Quran? If you then read the Quran, what would you then think about it? The issue here is that the Quran is just a book like any other book. And the Quran is just a book that comes out of ancient times, from a 7th century desert. The assertion that it was somehow miraculous, divine, and perfectly true in everything that it says is ludicrous. Some people might find it ridiculous that we are even arguing about whether the Quran has scientific mistakes or not. I often look at myself having these discussions and I think, what the hell am I doing here? But because it is so obvious that it does have mistakes. So you could say maybe these mistakes are just your point of view or my point of view. Maybe from his point of view, it is not a mistake. From my point of view, it is a mistake. But that is the entire issue. From my point of view, it is a mistake because I look at the Quran just as a book. From his point of view, it is not a mistake because it is in his point of view, the Quran is not allowed to have a mistake.
All right, Nadir, would you agree with that summary of the Quran being infallible and timeless? That it was like equally eternal with creation and all of that? How would you describe that?
Well, yeah, I would say that the Quran is a scientific miracle. We have many statements in the Quran which agree with modern science, and also the fact that the Quran actually corrects the scientific errors of the Bible. I think this is something which is astonishing. So our faith is not based on something which is blind, or hey, you can never question this. This is actually not true. This is a canard which I think Ridwan is bringing up. But what I see tonight, is really is very disappointing. First he tried to say that the Quran talks about shooting stars. I showed this was lamps. He doesn't know the language of the Quran. Then he tried to say, oh, but the sun is rising. Then I said, no, it doesn't say that. It actually said, I mean, to look to what it can be viewed. Then he said the sun has a stopping point. And then we showed him, mustaqar doesn't mean stopping. Tawaqquf means stopping. Oh, that's okay. You know what? I got these English translations which help me out. So Ridwan, really what I want to hear from you is, Ridwan, you didn't understand or even bother to study the very basics, and you don't need to learn Arabic of the Quran here. Can you just admit that you need to do some more research before you make these claims? Can you at least admit that?
I think we all need to make more research. We are never perfect, and I wouldn't come here and say that you have no knowledge of the Quran, because that is not my attitude. I think I think people can really judge what is happening here.
Yeah.
Can you retract the statement about the stopping, that the Quran actually stops? Because now I've educated you on what the word means.
That was a question that was brought up by the audience. And it wasn't. I'm supposed to read those who had donated to have their questions as a priority, but there was a question in here that was dissatisfied with the explanation or lack thereof for how the sun, that doesn't move in relation to the earth, comes to a position of stability every 24 hours.
Not stopping? You should say stopping. Ridwan said stopping. It stops. Right? What? How come you don't? Yeah, Ridwan said the sun stops.
The sun that never moves stops.
That's what Ridwan said. He said the Quran teaches that.
We're asking what you say.
Well, again, it's just mustaqar means stability. That's all it means. Yeah.
It goes to so it's the sun is unstable. Every 24 hours, the sun is unstable.
We don't know what is meant over here by stability. We don't want to read science into the verses. But the point here is that he's relying on English translations, which he doesn't even know what the actual Arabic said. And that's inexcusable, because we got all the resources on the internet that you can Google these things, and he didn't do it.
And none of those resources will tell us what it means for a sun to suddenly.
We don't know what it means, Aaron. We just gotta leave it alone.
Aaron,
what?
Can I challenge Nadir here for an explicit response to what it is? Nadir, do you accept this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So what the audience has been asking, what I'm right now very curious about, because Aaron has been asking it too, is according to the translations that I provided, I read several of them. In chapter 36, verse 38, it says, "And the sun runs onto a resting place for it," or for him. Your problem is with the word resting place here. You say that that it's not a resting place, that the sun doesn't stop, that it merely means stable. So according to you, what exactly does this Quran verse say? What does it convey?
See, resting could be a possible interpretation.
No, that's not the question. That's not the question. What exactly does the Quran verse say?
Means. But see, the thing here, Ridwan, what I was expecting from you is for you to show me how this verse contradicts a scientific fact. And it doesn't, because from a scientific point of view over here, if they see something like stability, they see things like resting. From a scientific point of view, they're going to say, wait a second, I need more detail. What are you referring to? So I can pinpoint and see, because science has to be very accurate. We don't have that type of detailed information. So for someone to come and say, oh, well, this contradicts science, I'm sorry, that claim is not valid. It's just not enough information to start making these claims.
If the sun doesn't move relative to the earth, but every 24 hours goes to a place where it is unstable until it becomes to a place of stability, and then moves from that place of stability again every 24 hours, that yes, necessarily must contradict science unless it can be explained in a way that aligns with science. And you're telling me that you have no explanation that aligns with science. All we have is the one that doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Am I debating you two, Aaron? Or am I debating Ridwan? Who am I doing? If you want to go both against me, that's fine. Like I said, I've already
no. Okay. Let's stay between you and me. Let's stay between me and
you. Okay. That's fine.
Harlequin also donated $5 for this question to be asked. He says, how do you determine the Quran supports science? By what method? How did you account for potential confirmation bias given you're already a believer?
Mhm. So, as far as confirmation bias, that's what I like. That's why I like to do debates. In fact, what I will do, I would like to debates and discussion. I consider this more of a discussion. I like to take the case in front of university crowds, where we invite the students, the faculty to come and debate these things. I was just discussing this at University of Washington, where I discussed the scientific miracles of the Quran. And in fact, I tell you what, since you, Ridwan, I guess you see yourself as kind of like a watchdog, where you accuse Muslims of doing deception and things like this. I would invite the people you make, you make these videos as David Wood, Sam Shimono, Christian Prince, to come debate me. I believe my next stop is Arizona State, and come discuss these things with me. Are there scientific errors in the Bible? You see, here's what I'm objecting to, Ridwan. You accused us of doing deception when the very people you're making these videos are deceiving people about the scientific errors of the Bible. In fact, they're run away. They will never answer the mustard seed publicly with me. They'll never talk about how the Quran is correcting the scientific errors of the Bible. So this is taqiyya. This is a deception that you have accused us with. So I would very much like to see you challenge them. Will you do that, Ridwan?
Nadir, answering the question?
Yeah, I think I answered your question.
No, the question was,
Oh.
how do you determine that the Quran supports science? By what method? How do you account for potential confirmation bias, given that you're already a believer?
Yeah. So the answer to that, you gotta open it up to other people for them to decide. But yeah, you are right. There is confirmation bias. There is this thing where we're gonna, of course, be very sympathetic to it. So when we make our case, as I mentioned on the university platform, that's a great time where we can hear the objections and we can present our case. But as far as when you said, like, for example, how do we know that the Quran is a scientific miracle? Again, so here's how we do that. We have to understand, number one, that just because we show something in the Quran which agrees with science, we don't jump to the conclusion, there you go, you see, that's a scientific miracle. We have to also understand this could be open for interpretation, where you might have a non-scientific explanation. We got to entertain that. We also have to entertain the possibility this could be a coincidence. We also have to entertain the possibility, could this be copied from a different source? So once we entertain all the natural possibilities, we can then move to start dismissing those natural possibilities to one possibility exists, and that this is a scientific miracle. So that's the overall process.
For another $5, Harlequin added that if it's not specific enough to scrutinize scientifically, then it's not specific enough to claim that it supports science either. I'm going to move to a next one, Muhammad.
Can I quickly give a comment to
Sure.
To the question that Nadir Ahmed answered? Yes. I would say I don't understand why he keeps talking about the Bible. This is a problem that we had before. The Bible is never a topic of this conversation, except when it comes up as a question, which only happened once. But I would like to say that Nadir Ahmed has not answered the question again, because about confirmation bias, and this is something that I talked about at the very beginning and in the middle of a conversation, where I said that it is simply not possible for him to come to the conclusion that the Quran is wrong, because it clashes with his ideological, it clashes with his worldview, it clashes with his explanation of why he exists, to accept that the Quran is in any way wrong. That's why the only outcome that he can reach from a study on the Quran is that the Quran is right. There is no other possibility.
One of the other viewers here, the one I was just reading, Muhammad Al-Habash, asked if he could join the call to ask Nadir a question in Arabic. Unfortunately, I lacked the familiarity with this system to know how to drag somebody from the audience into a call. I'm sorry that I don't know how to do that. At least not in the chat, the network that I have right now. All right, so going to the next question, my apologies on that. Let me see, the next one, there was another one for 500 yen from Devil Dog 314. How do you explain the verse that talks about where sperm comes from? That is a case where the Quran is clearly wrong. And I really wish he hadn't asked that question, because we spent an hour over that already.
Well, I want to say before Nadir Ahmed goes into explaining his point of view on that, because he will definitely have more to say on the matter. I would say I deliberately didn't bring up that question because I know that it wouldn't go anywhere, because it is from our point of view, from our anti-Quranic point of view, if I may say that, it is very clear that the Quran makes a scientific mistake in which it claims that sperm comes from between the backbones and ribs, and there's just not very much that should be said about it. Every moment that we spend talking about it is a moment in defense of Islam, but every moment that we spend talking about it is also really not in favor of Islam, because it is ridiculous. But please go ahead, Nadir.
But the question was for Nadir, so please, Nadir, be brief. Nadir?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again over here. And this is actually a scientific miracle. I call this the raw miracle of Islam. And can you guys see my screen here? Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we know from science today that the actual seminal fluid goes from the testes through the vas deferens. Now, the vas deferens is a pipe, which is this little blue pipe over here, which sits on top of the bladder. Now, if the person is lying flat on his back, and you can see that his rib cage is the x-axis, his backbone is a y-axis. Now, the question which I have for anybody, for you guys over here, is the vas deferens, which is a pipe which the seminal fluid is ejected, from the testes. Is this between the backbone and the ribs? Is that a true or false statement based on what you see over here? Again, this is a vas deferens right over here.
Right.
The rib cage is right over here. Is that a true or false statement?
It is not between the backbone and the ribs.
Wait a second. Am I talking to Ridwan or okay?
Well,
anybody can look at the picture. It's right over here. The rib cage is here. The backbone is over here. So this is, absolutely correct. So when you say that the vas deferens is not between the backbone and the ribs, you are either you cannot see my picture or you don't know science, Aaron. Okay, but in fact, let me go ahead and stop sharing here. I think that's. But there's also one more thing, and this is the raw miracle. This is what Aaron Ra actually discovered. I want to thank you for it, because when the semen goes from the seminal fluid goes from the testes up through the vas deferens, it is not semen yet. It's seminal fluid. So when we look at the verse which is being quoted over there, semen is not used there. Ma, which is water, or actually translated as fluid, is used there, which is absolutely scientifically correct. So this is a raw miracle. And so this is also a question with
raw miracle. I never understood when you said that before.
Okay.
It said semen,
because you asked me about this.
Fluid, then so what of it? At no point does that ever go between the backbone and the rib. But we'll let the audience look up all of anatomy.
The question here, which the audience needs to answer, and if Ridwan, you could answer it too, is the vas deferens, is that between the x and the y axis, x being the rib cage, the y axis being the backbone, is the vas deferens between the backbone and the ribs if the guy is lying flat on his back? That's the question which I want you to answer. And I've shown you a picture of it. We've all seen it.
No, so that is a straw man. That is a straw man. The Quran clearly says it comes from between the backbones and the ribs. The sperm, the semen comes from between the backbones and the ribs. The semen never goes there. The semen never goes there. And the semen does not come from between the backbones and the ribs. That's not how biology. That is basic biology. We don't even need to go into fancy words about that at all.
Okay, so
I think you're just making attestations and affirmations, but we have shown you exactly where it is, so people can look at the picture. And people can see that's absolutely correct. Thank you so much.
People can look at the picture and they'll know better. Understood.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And, Snake was right. This is another person. This is somebody's name. Snake was right. For $2 says, doesn't stable mean it's not moving, Nadir?
No, not at all. It's again, stable can be in English. It could have many different interpretations, but we can interpret this to mean many different things.
Okay, so we're going to have
It's open for interpretation.
previously stated that if
There's
it's
many
not
meanings.
specific enough to be scrutinized scientifically, then it can't be said to support science either. All right, so
we just leave it alone. We don't have enough information on
It's
it.
a scientific miracle.
yeah, okay, gotcha. All right, and I think that was all of the ones that wait, RPG Gamer Guy. So never mind. For $2 said, "Love your content, Aaron." Sorry, sorry, that wasn't a question. So Tom Panel, let me see. What's that? You posted some more? Okay. All right, let me go down here. Hindu historian, $5 Canadian said, "Just want to thank Nadir for helping demonstrate how hard it is to defend the Quran." Okay. RPG Gamer Guy, $5. Nadir, are you aware your arguments are no different than the ones used by Christian apologetics? Can you show objective evidence for your claims?
Sure. So, I think where these people have been left with, they're just left to nothing more than sneering and jeering and spreading fear. That's because they have not been able to present anything in the Quran which contradicts science. So you want to say, how are my arguments any different? This is what the Christians will say to the scientific errors of the Bible. Oh, that's all metaphorical. That's all poetic. He's just talking to the people according to their understanding. This is like, for example, the mustard seed. This is all deception, which I'm sure Ridwan would agree. He keeps asking, why do I go back to the Bible? Well, you see, Ridwan, I'm trying to corner you. I'm trying to make you consistent, because the deception which you claim we as Muslims do, we're not doing that. I'm not offering this. In fact, I'll tear this up right now. Okay, I would never offer such nonsense to explain away the Quran, and nobody's heard that tonight. But your friends, David Wood, Sam Shimon, and Christian Prince, who are all scared to debate this topic or just talk about this. Just have a talk about it.
What point
I think it is a bit shameful to keep talking about other individuals.
Confront them with their deception here. You see. So, anyways, I think I've exposed your hypocrisy here.
These other people's names keep coming up. How they were ever relevant to this discussion?
I'm here.
I don't think it is appropriate. I don't think it is appropriate to keep bringing up people who are not here to defend themselves.
They're not going to come here because they're afraid of the scientific errors are going to get exposed.
All right. So this is an unpronounceable name, and maybe it's in Leet speak. I don't know, but I'm not reading it. M15TRR3CT4NGL. For $5 says, Nadir talks constantly about English translations being incorrect and then uses Google Translate to translate Arabic into English in an English debate. All right, again, that was not a question. So Harlequin, okay, we've done that one. I think there's one or two more. No, that seems to be those were the paying ones. I'm going to find one more. To apologize for the sloth as I go through these.
I want to remind everyone that I'm an atheist and not a Christian.
Gotcha. And there goes the battle dog. Shut up. No. Apologies, everyone.
No problem.
Shut up.
Dogs are good.
Yeah. So
Islam says dogs are bad, but dogs are good.
I think that's the last. I'm going to go ahead and let it go. There doesn't seem to be any more relevant questions to the debate. I'm going to give you both a final 3 minutes to make closing statements, and then we'll end it. Wait, there is more. Iron Charioteer says, ask Nadir, Islam had its empire, and according to history, all the books and the info of the time was moved from Greece to Baghdad. Do you think Muhammad had access to that info?
So this is the claim, or that maybe Muhammad copied from some other source or plagiarized from another source. I've never seen any evidence for that. But like I said, unfortunately, we were not able to debate the topic. Well, how did the Quran agree with science? How did the Quran correct the scientific errors of the Bible? I think once you see these debates and you hear the arguments, I think you will be convinced that there is something scientifically correct about the Quran. And unfortunately, we did not get to the issue of the actual scientific miracle discovered by Ridwan. So I think if you looked at the evidences, that would change your mind.
All right. And my wife wanted to ask a question. I don't know if I think she's still muted. She came in here. She said she wanted to.
I got to plug in my laptop. So just give me 1 second here. It's about to die.
All right. While you do that, Honey, are you there? Okay. Just
Can I quickly give a response to that question too?
yes.
I think it is a little known, but also well confirmed, provable thing that that Muhammad was in his life before he became a prophet. It was well known that he was a merchant who used to travel a lot between Syria and his hometown. That was Mecca or Medina. Later later in his life, and it is well known that on his travels as a successful merchant, Muhammad used to come across and listen to a lot of stories from Jews and Christians, and also from Jewish heretical sects and Christian heretical sects. And it is widely asserted that Muhammad picked up a lot of stories from those people, as well as from Zoroastrians and from a group called the Sabians. But since this came up, it might as well be that some issues in the Quran were stories taken from those people.
I know my wife would like to ask a couple of questions. There's two more new ones that appeared in the chat. So go ahead, honey.
Yes, there. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Sure.
Barely. How about now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. My question is for Nadir, but I think Apostate Prophet might know this answer too. I come from a Christian tradition where the Bible tells Christians to witness respectfully and shine your light. And is there a corresponding verse like that in the Quran where when you're sharing the word of the Quran that you are respectful, and so that therefore you could represent your faith better to people who are not believers like me? I'm not a believer anymore, and most of the chat room aren't believers. So how do you think, if there is, how do you think it comes across to non-believers when you insult people's intelligence, you sound a little bit patronizing? I mean, does that work better with people who already believe because they're like, yeah, he scored a point, or does that convince anybody who doesn't believe? Then that was my question.
Okay, I guess it's a question for me. I think considering who Ridwan is, and considering how he has, desecrated what we believe, he has mocked, ridiculed, and insulted our belief, and and that's really what has made him so famous. I think he's been addressed quite appropriately here today. I could have probably said more words stronger to address him. The mere fact that he came tonight, he had spread, these claims that the Quran contradicts science, and we have found out tonight that he didn't even do the due diligence of researching what these Arabic words mean, and even going the extra level to find out what these, just a very basic analysis of this. He didn't even do that. Rather, what he did, he just copy and pasted, false claims from one website and basically presented them. I think I handled him in the most appropriate manner. Yeah, I didn't. I think he had to be reprimanded tonight for this. I mean, he's talking about stopping points, the rising. The Quran says stars. None of this stuff exists in the Quran. He was handled in an appropriate manner. And I think reprimanded in this debate is the appropriate thing to do. But you are right. When we actually go out to present our message to the people, the Quran does teach to be kind, humble, in that. In fact, one verse which I'll give you, there was a person named Pharaoh, and he was a terrible tyrant. But when God sent Moses to Pharaoh, God said, and say a kind, good word to Pharaoh. And so even for this horrible person, I think, we see that we are supposed to treat them in a very good way. And so, yeah, to answer your question, we have the same thing in our religion. Because if we were, and there is one last hadith in the Quran where it said, if we made you miserable and overbearing, talking to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our prophet, then nobody would have come to this message. All right, so I think we're all on the same page.
All right, honey, do you have
let me respond to that, Aaron. Please let me respond to that. First off, I want to make one thing very clear. I want to be very frank about this right now. before we had no, first off, Nadir Ahmed didn't answer the question. He was again so rude, so dishonest that he took the entire time that he had to respond to this question and attacked me instead personally. This is how rude he was. Secondly, that said, before I agreed to have a debate with Nadir Ahmed, it is very well known that I don't accept debates if they come with personal attacks. For example, when people like I don't want to mention people now without them being here, but when several other people offered debates, those debate offers always came with insults. And I said, sorry, if you talk to me like that, I will not have a debate. I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care if you think this is me scared or whatever. I won't have a debate with you. I really don't give a shit. So if you want to have a debate with me, be a decent human being. Nadir Ahmed promised to me previously to have a friendly exchange with me. He explicitly said that. I think he has been quite dishonest and he has played this trick because he knows exactly that I don't accept debates unless they come in a respectful manner. So he approached me in a respectful manner first, only then to come here and try to assault me personally, try to assault my past and what I'm doing and who I am and my knowledge and all that stuff. He has spent all the time to personally attack me here. So I really don't want to hold back here anymore at all. This only proves to everyone again what kind of despicable human beings are in the defense of Islam. And I've as always been proven right in this manner. So everyone behold. To your question,
I don't want anything to degenerate into further insults. So
okay, no. I'll come to the question. I would say it is very well known that I am not a Christian. I am an atheist, but I have some respect for Christianity in how much it teaches its believers to approach people with love, and how often it talks about love, how much it talks about forgiveness, about including people whom the Jews, the Pharisees excluded previously, and so on. It is prominent for these sentiments. The Quran doesn't have that. Islam does not have that. Islam explicitly tells the Muslims to not love the disbelievers. It says that Allah does not love the disbelievers. It says so numerous times. The Quran mentions love negatively much more than it mentions love positively. It teaches to hate those who reject Allah. It says it tells you to not respect the infidels, to not be close friends with the infidels. It tells you that it says, may Allah destroy them, in chapter 9, verse 29 and 30, which I love very much to quote. It orders to subjugate them because they are liars and they are delusional. It talks about the Christians and the Jews. No, it talks about in the hadith.
The responses. So I think Nadir is right. That went long.
Okay, can we? I'll finish in just a few seconds. Muhammad said in one very prominent hadith, he said, may Allah curse the Jews and the Christians. The Quran starts in chapter 2 and says that those who reject its message are deaf, dumb, and blind. And it goes on and says, oh, may Allah destroy them. What can you expect from a religion that teaches this? What can you expect from its defendants?
Okay, but again, I don't want this to get any more negative. Lalandra, do you want to take these last 4 questions or 5 questions perhaps from the super chat?
Okay, here we go. Sharaf Paka says cheers to everybody. Esbior, he says, Nadir, what are your thoughts on the verse that says the spider's house is the weakest house, when we know that spider silk is very strong fiber? Did you get that?
The spider's house is the weakest house? Do you have the
Yes.
verse? You could show that to me?
Oh, geez.
I don't think the verse was mentioned. It says 29:41.
So I guess what I'm having a hard time understanding is, where is the contradiction with science?
The contradiction was explained in the question that spider silk is very strong fiber. All right, so that was for Isbior. Then there is, looks like another question from Harlequin, and there's also one that I think my wife didn't catch.
Yeah.
€5 from Ms. Jessa. Says, there seems to be a Muslim flat earther in the chat. Can he debate Nadir?
Do you believe in a flat earth, Nadir?
No, of course not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if there is a Muslim flat earther in the chat, that would be a spectacular debate. I'd like to see that. All right, and Lalandra, get the last of these questions from the super chat, please. You're muted again. You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. Harlequin asks again, you're making the book say what we already know intimately well via science retroactively, shaped by your bias, no? How do you know that you've eliminated your bias? Like you're already you want to defend the Quran?
Mm-hmm.
So
well, I think that's a question which really all of us have to answer here. I think Ridwan has to answer that as well. I think I have to answer that. We all, I think, come in with our biases, and that's why I like discussions and debates where we can hear from both sides of the argument. That's really the only way I think we're gonna do it. I think Ridwan, as far as you mentioned, as far as personal attacks, I don't think I made any personal attacks, but I did.
Could you please
I
answer
do
the
think I
question
did it.
and not waste more time on that?
Well, you wasted a lot of time actually talking about it, so I'd like to waste a little bit of time if that's okay.
Let it go.
Okay. Well, also he also made some flagrant attacks against the Quran that don't love the disbelievers, things like that. This is not what the Quran teaches. That is also another misrepresentation of the Quran. We are commanded to be good, and we can love disbelievers. If we would like to have that discussion, well, definitely we can have it. So I guess that's all I'll say on that.
Okay.
I would answer the question in just.
What was that?
I would like to answer the question in just saying, of course, we all might have some bias. I often reflect and notice that I have bias here and there. That is very obvious. We are never free of bias. The only thing is that is how confident I am in my position is that that I actually allow myself to always freely think through what I'm reading and what I'm thinking about. So I always have the possibility there of whether I am right or wrong. And fact is that I used to be a very fervent believer who used to spread the message and who used to be engaged in Islamic apologetics, and I'm now doing the opposite of that.
Right, then we have Tricky Spot for £5 says, do Muslims have more ribs? Mine stop just above my stomach.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is going back to just mocking and ridiculing. Why? Because, it was clear from this debate, there was no scientific error in the Quran, no explicit statement in the Quran which contradicts science. So now, like I said, they're now just resorting to mocking and making fun. But I tell you what, if you really had a good argument, that would have sealed the deal. You should be bringing up good arguments. Now, when the challenge is out there for anybody. You can Google this, and I actually showed you the picture. Is the vas deferens between the backbone and the ribs? And it is absolutely the case. I've shown you the picture of it, and this is where the semen actually shoots up to.
Everybody definitely should go look at Nadir's picture and ask that question.
Mockery and ridicule. I tell you what,
it's very, very clear.
All right, keep mocking. Go ahead, keep it up. Yeah.
Then
I don't think that was a mockery. That was just
$5 says, Nadir, can your claims about scientific miracles in the Quran stand independently of the Bible? If so, can you name 2 not mentioned so far?
Yeah, so there are examples of scientific miracles in the Quran, for example. But now, when we talk about verses which agree with modern science, we also have to take into account the fact that this could be open for interpretation. So we have to and when we look at it, we have to assume the fact. The first place we got to assume is, okay, this cannot be miraculous. This is probably a coincidence or something like that. So there is a verse in the Quran which specifically states that the male and the female are from the sperm. Now, when we look at science today, we see that the sperm is in fact the deciding factor on what determines the gender. Now, we can look at this verse and we can say, okay, well, maybe he was referring regardless if it's male or female, even though the word regardless is not there. So when we look at this is one verse which agrees with modern science. So that's one example of a verse which is in complete agreement. Another example is it correcting the Bible. I want to just give one example of that. When it talked about Noah's flood is something which is believed to be a worldwide flood, and that's actually taught in the Bible. But when we see inside the Quran, it actually said that, and we flooded the people of Noah. I think that's chapter 25, verse 74. And this is more in accordance with what we know today of modern science, that we have a local flood in the Quran, and while all the other books are talking about a global flood.
Okay, we've got 3 questions left, and I think we're going to end it with those.
Actually, we got to do it before 5 o'clock because we have an appointment at 5.
3 questions.
Do you want to go
left.
into
quickly?
Closing statements or?
Earth and Mystique says, nope, we just read that one. So we've only got 2 questions left. Ms. Jessa says, ex-Muslims are some of the most oppressed people on the planet. This is for all of you brave people. Not a question, so that saves us time. And finally, Vincent Vega, great name, for €5 says, how can a designer of this planet forget to mention that the sun doesn't go down in Scandinavia in June while expecting people to not eat during Ramadan?
What?
I don't know if you want to take that.
I included that into one of my 60 scientific mistakes in mentioning that that the Quran at several locations demands humans to get up and pray at certain times, or to pray and go to sleep at certain times, and also to start fasting and stop fasting at certain times. But if you follow those instructions explicitly, you will find yourself in a big confusion if you live north of the Arctic Circle, for example, where these descriptions of the sun's movement don't apply. If you are north of the Arctic Circle somewhere and you are trying to fast in the summer during Ramadan, then you will be totally perplexed because the sun is there all the time, or it's gone for quite a while, which is why modern Muslim scholars came up with solutions to that in saying just stick to Mecca times, or just stick to a time that is closer to you, in which the sun actually works the way it's supposed to work in the Quran.
Right. And Nadir, and this will be the last, but if you or the last response to the question, then you guys make your closing statements.
Yeah, so let's take the example of fasting in a place in Norway where there's no light. There's an authentic hadith in which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that there's going to come a time when the Antichrist will come. In that time, it'll be for 40 days. One day is going to be like a year. So they did ask the question, which actually Ridwan is asking. And so the answer is over here. And they said, well, how are we going to pray? And so the answer is, you must make an estimate of the time. Basically, you must do calculations. So what we see from here, that I guess the claim is, well, maybe Muhammad didn't know that there are places like Norway, which the night is a very long time. That's not the case, as we can see clearly from this hadith, that you must make an estimate of the time.
Okay. And then finally, you guys, closing statements, no more than 3 minutes. Doesn't have to be 3 minutes.
Can we do 4? I think we still have some time.
It's got to be before 5, dude.
Yeah, okay. I think Nadir's got to bail.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me a second. Do you want me to go? Nadir, go first.
Just you can go first, dude. Go, please.
Nadir, go ahead.
Nadir, you can go first.
I'm gonna go first. Okay. Here you go. All right. Well, Ridwan, thank you for coming for this discussion. I know there's been times in this discussion where I'm a little bit condescending with you, but I think it was well deserved, because you came into this discussion without even doing the very basic research and making claim that the Quran contradicts science here, the Quran contradicts science over there. We never saw any of this. Rather, you did not study the word, the very Arabic which which the Quran is revealed in. You didn't even bother to look at these words. What am I supposed to do in this situation? Of course, I have to expose that ignorance in the best way I can. But it gets worse. This misinformation, I guess this mistake, you promulgated and spread to hundreds and thousands of people. Things like, for example, not knowing that mustaqar doesn't mean stopping, not knowing that talk about the sun rising. This is nowhere in the Quran. The word is at-taliya, which means what can be viewed. These are like kind of some of the very basic things. The kind of almost the most inexcusable thing is all these words which I'm referring to, they're used in today's time. You can, this is not like a dead language which only was spoken 1400 years ago. So I think you need to do some more research on the Quran, and I definitely invite you to, if you can find anything in the Quran which contradicts science, please bring it up. It doesn't have to be a discussion, or it doesn't have to be a debate. We could just have like a discussion on it. The things about shooting stars, we found out that the Quran doesn't say anything about stars. We saw that it was masabih, it was lamps. So once again, just another mistake on your part. And this is, like I said, I've went through every one of these claims of the so-called scientific errors in the Quran, and every one of them fails very similar to what we have seen. So, and you keep saying, why would I bring up the Bible? Why would I bring up Christians? Because I want to keep you consistent, Ridwan. In the same way you've accused Muslims of being deceptive or something like that, the people doing the deception is that guy right next to you, Christian Prince, who ran away from the scientific debate, which we see here today. People like David Wood, people like Sam Shimon, they will deceive people about the scientific errors in the Quran in the exact same way that you accuse us Muslims. Tonight, you never heard me say things like, "Oh, well, he's just talking about according to the understanding of those people," or "this is all metaphorical, this is all allegorical." You never heard anything like that from me. I went straight to the Quran, to the actual text of the Quran, and explained what these words meant. So I hope we could have a discussion maybe one day on how the Quran actually agrees with science. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nadir. And go ahead, Ridvan.
Well, I want to thank everyone again for making this possible. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Nadir, for offering this challenge and proving to everyone again completely my point. I initially thought it was a waste of time to debate Muslim apologists. I still kind of think so. But I also think that it's this has helped in improving my point greatly, improving our point greatly, and this has helped in debunking the Quran actually. And if in case someone missed it, we have witnessed earlier in this conversation that Nadir Ahmed actually as he loves to say it, discovered a scientific mistake when he read the chapter 36, verse 38. After this, please go ahead and look it up. I said that the sun runs toward its stopping point according to the Quran. He said that it doesn't mean stopping point, that the word mustaqar means actually, what did he say? Stable, not moving, something like that. If you take that word directly and put it into the Quran verse, into the context, it actually literally means, and the sun runs toward a point where it's not moving. So Nadir Ahmed actually disproved and debunked the Quran here for all of us, which is funny because he keeps saying that I haven't been able to prove the Quran wrong because I can't prove the Quran wrong. And the issue here is that he has proven the Quran wrong together with me, and we have ended up with a Quran verse that we cannot explain because it is on face value clearly wrong. And Nadir Ahmed simply resorts to calling this a scientific miracle instead, because we cannot explain the Quran verse in any scientifically accurate way because it is simply wrong. So this again proves our point in that the Quran is wrong. And I'm really sincerely thankful to Nadir Ahmed for helping us come to this conclusion again and again. In terms of making assertions such as that he has failed or I have failed, I don't want to be arrogant here. It's just not who I am. So I would just leave it with that and leave it to the audience to decide what really happened here today. They can always verify the information that has been given here. For when I have been mocking and condescending during this talk, I would not only not do that. I'm sorry to everyone else except to Nadir Ahmed, because I think this was a completely normal reaction that I gave to him being hostile and being very insulting from the very beginning. I would always hope to come across Muslim apologists who are not like this, who are more decent in their attitude. That said, as always, stay away from Islam, everybody, and you can always read for yourself and come to the conclusion that you want to come to. Dear Muslims, read the Quran, please, and make up your own mind. Don't trust the indoctrination. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you both very much. Thank you also to Victory, Shout, NZ, and to Juz El Aranta. I know I'm messing that up, but I apologize. I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Thank you both. Thank you, everybody, from the Super Chat. Nadir, Ridvan, thank you, everybody. Thank you, my wife, for pulling up everybody's questions from the Super Chat because I couldn't monitor all of that. And I'm going to go ahead and close it out. Thank you.
Thanks.